Dr. Peter Vincent Pry is the Executive Director of the EMP Task Force on National and Homeland Security and the former Chief of Staff Congressional EMP Commissioner. Hey, Dr. Pry, welcome back to the show. Always great to have you with us, and we're so proud to have you with us on the show this morning.
Well, thank you for having me, Joe.
Well, you make so much sense, Dr. Pry, and I'm reading, after this blackout in New York, and I'm reading everything you wrote, Dr. Peter Vincent Pry, and I invite you listening to Google Dr. Pry. This is the man that is so ahead of the curve. We talked about it last time. People started talking about it. I know John Catsimatidis, the great John Catsimatidis, our dear friend, was so interested in it. What about this blackout in New York? It was only 5 hours, but it threw the entire city into chaos. What would have happened if this was a week or a month without power? And tell us about the dangers of the electrical grid, not only in New York, but throughout the United States, sir.
Well, we can look to Venezuela for an example of what would have happened if the blackout had been more protracted. Due to mismanagement in Venezuela, because they've got a socialist system. They underinvested in their electric grid down there, and they ended up getting a blackout. This was a couple of months ago that lasted about 10 days, and about on the third day into the blackout, because there was no running water in Venezuela, people were drinking out of the sewers, and there's going to be consequently probably thousands of deaths resulting from the diseases from that. There was, no food, no communications. In effect, they were thrown back to a pre-electric 19th, 17th century kind of a system, down there in Venezuela. And, this was the 40th anniversary, by the way. I mean, the blackout happened of the great New York City blackout of 1977, where 9 million people, were put into the dark. This was a relatively small blackout in New York City compared to a larger, what we know is actually possible. And our electric grid isn't any more sophisticated than the Venezuelan grid. Both of them are susceptible to cascading failures. We experienced this, for example, in the Great Northeast Blackout of 2003, when a tree branch came in contact with a high-power voltage line in Ohio, and from that little thing, cascading failures rippled through the system that put 50 million Americans in the dark, the whole Northeast, including New York City again in 2003. Yeah. People had to walk home across the Brooklyn Bridge to get home to the subways. But in terms of something like a worst-case scenario, like an EMP attack or a cyber attack that takes out the whole national grid, would be the end of our civilization. The EMP Commission, which I served, we estimated that if the blackout lasted a year, 9 of 10 Americans could die from starvation, disease, and societal collapse. And these, these incidents are warnings to us. They're foreshadowings of what could happen. If we get an EMP from a nuclear attack from North Korea, or an EMP from the sun, which is inevitable and it's going to happen for sure someday, when we have a geomagnetic superstorm, the odds are 12% per decade that one will happen, and it's inevitable, or if a cyber attack from the Iranians or terrorists.
Exactly.
And by the way, on this, one of the things that disturbs me about this incident, our elites on both sides of the Atlantic, tend to treat our people like children. When Mayor de Blasio came out immediately and said, there was no foul play, they hadn't even done a proper investigation. In fact, I would say that they still you just can't trust the officials on this matter.
Thank you. Thank you.
There was a burned-out transformer.
Yep.
There was a fire at a transformer.
Yep.
But how do they know yet that burned-out transformer wasn't due to a cyber attack on the SCADAs that caused an overvoltage, that caused the fire that made the transformer fail? It should take serious investigation and quite a long time to figure that out. It reminds me of the fire at Notre Dame Cathedral, where they were so quick to assure everybody, this wasn't terrorists, even though Islamic jihadis are flaming a Christian church once a week in Europe. They were quick to tell everybody that the burning of Notre Dame Cathedral was not an act of terrorism, even before the investigation had been conducted. And I would add, I keep waiting for the smoking gun from Paris proving that it was not a jihadi attack that burned Notre Dame Cathedral. I predict the same thing will happen here, where people will just, they'll wait for people to forget about this incident, and we will never be given definitive proof, that this was just a normal mechanical malfunction, which it might well have been, because the utilities not only are they failing to protect against EMP and cyber attacks adequately, but they're not even maintaining the modernity of the grid. Most of these transformers are past middle age, and so it could have been a mechanical failure, but I just don't trust the officials.
No, and I am so glad to see someone in your, as astute as you are in this, Dr. Pry. We appreciate you being so vigilant on it, and I hope the government is as well. But when I go by those grids, those electrical little power stations, they're wide open. I've been railing about this now for years. They're wide open. Doctor, there's not a police car. There's a little low barbed wire fence. Isn't that really inviting, and I don't want to jinx anything here, sir, but isn't that inviting a terror attack?
And in fact, it is. And we, back in April 16th of 2013, one of the things that makes me so suspicious of, and mistrusting of officialdom when it comes to these matters was the attack on the Metcalf Transformer substation on April 16th, 2013, in outside of San Jose, California. This was a very important transformer substation, unprotected, just the way you described it. But, if the bad guys had gone all the way and taken out all those transformers, it would have put the whole Western grid in the blackout. And the only reason they didn't, and the only reason and by the way, it took 18 months at the North American Electric Reliability Corporation and PG&E out in California covered it up for 18 months. And the only reason we knew about it is the chairman of the U.S. Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, John Willinghoff, thought it was so important to tell the people the truth about what happened that he resigned his position. He resigned his position so he could tell the Wall Street Journal that this was not an accident, but it was actually a commando operation. He had brought in the U.S. Navy SEALs, and they said that this wasn't an accident, it wasn't simple vandalism, but it was a sophisticated commando operation that was probably practiced for a larger attack on a national grid at some point in the future. And we didn't know about that for 18 months, and it took the resignation of a senior official of the U.S. government, to talk to the Wall Street Journal to get it out to the public. So.
Peter, Dr. Pry, and you're hearing the former chief of staff, Congressional EMP Commission. Before we let you go, sir, I mean, you have to, with respect, sir, come back, because this is we have to do a longer segment on this. This is really riveting. How prepared are we as a country, before we let you go, Dr. Pry, to deal with EMP or an electrical grid breakdown, sir?
Well, we're not prepared. However, we have an opportunity to be prepared, because President Trump passed an executive order on March 26th to protect the nation from EMP, to get the U.S. government harnessed to do it.
Thank you. That's good to know. Dr. Pry, would you please come back? And if you're listening, Dr. Peter Vincent Pry, you have to Google this man. He is so ahead of the curve. Dr. Pry, with great respect, we appreciate you checking in with us this morning. And can we talk again, sir? We'd love that very much.
Oh, of course.
Thank you.
Welcome the opportunity.
Thank you. Dr. Peter Vincent Pry. Episcopal in the Morning, going to...